It's time for Reason.
Why would we give the ability for the Supreme Court to come back and say it's not adequate enough and be able to consume as much of the budget as they possibly want to for education, and then for everybody else to get the scraps and the leftovers? Why have we not focused on the Kansas Supreme Court's constitutional amendment to limit the power of the Supreme Court? Why is that not the number one priority and the only priority that we've had when it comes to educational finance?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get fooled again.
Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live across the entire Mid-America Network in the heartland of America out of Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker KQAM, simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610, and across the entire Mid-America Network. Welcome in. This is the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. What's up? Welcome in. Happy Thursday. It's another great day in paradise as we do live in the greatest nation on the face of the earth, which that should be something right there to wake up every single morning, especially this early in the morning, and say, you know what? I can get through the day. You know what? I can find the positiveness of what's happening in my life. Why? Because we live in the greatest daggone nation of the entire face of the earth. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of great things happening, and it's always open lines to you as well for whatever's bothering you, troubling you, and something you want to discuss. You're more than welcome to do so. 8 minutes past the hour. We do have the Facebook Live feed up and rolling as well, facebook.com/1480KQAM. We have the Twitter at Hoosier Reason. So there's really no reason why you shouldn't have to be able to reach out, ask a question, leave a comment, whatever's bothering you and troubling you. But I want to start off with this morning. I was over the past couple of weeks, every once in a while, my wife and I enjoy watching Netflix and watching certain shows. And one of the shows that we came across every once in a while is called Brain Games. I don't know if you've ever seen this. And it's fun because it's a TV show to where they actually do these social experiments and they teach you about how your brain can play tricks on you and how you need to work on certain things. And it's kind of fun. It's entertaining. One of the social experience and social experiments, and maybe you've seen this on social media as well, was the one where there's a waiting room where people are waiting to be called upon, and there's three actors that start off in there, and they start bringing in the experiments, the individuals that are being experimented on, into the room. And what they don't realize is that the three actors are being told that every time that they hear a beep that they stand up, just out of their chair. They stand up in front of their chair, and then when it beeps again, and they sit back down. And the experimenters are the ones to see, let's see if it's like a monkey see, monkey do type of behavior, to where when they hear the beep, well, they begin to do the same thing and stand up, or will they sit down and just look at these people and say, you guys are crazy, why are you doing this? And will they try and understand why they're standing up every time they hear the beep, or will they just follow the leader and do the monkey see, monkey do type of behavior to just do what everyone else is doing? And I've always thought that kind of mentality of just doing what everybody else is doing just for the sake of doing it was kind of a democratic liberal tendency, because they have a very difficult time thinking for themselves. Kind of the tongue-in-cheek political spin on that. But then I'm starting to realize that this is growing to a larger extent of what people believe in and how they actually operate in a daily life. And they begin to really they follow the leader mentality, that maybe they don't quite understand why people are doing certain things, or they don't necessarily understand the issues or the topics per se, but they continue to just go down the trend of, yeah, this is the popular way to do it. This is what everybody else is doing right now, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to follow suit. And it really plays into the hand of what the latest poll shows, when we saw from the Rasmussen poll, 46% of individuals in the United States favor government guaranteed jobs for all. Now, if you remember, this has been a piece of legislation Bernie Sanders is working on when it comes to guaranteed jobs for anybody who wants a job or needs a job by the government, along with the individual or universal health care, to guarantee anybody that needs or wants health care has the opportunity to be able to get health care. And this, I believe, is kind of the monkey see, monkey do kind of mentality. You're walking into the social experiment. You're walking into the waiting room. You hear the beep, and you don't know why everybody's standing up during the beep, but all of a sudden you just start standing up because you think that's what everybody else is doing, so that's what you need to be doing as well. Because this is the social norm. They have worked us they have seasoned us, they have prepped us for this type of behavior to say that we deserve what we think we need. We deserve it. We don't need to go out and get it anymore ourselves. And maybe we've been trying to, and maybe we've been struggling. Maybe there's been a bad economy, and maybe you haven't been able to find the job that you want to. But now we've been seasoned to say, this is, if you feel that you need it, then you deserve it. Let me tell you something. You don't deserve a single thing. Nobody deserves a single thing. And that's what we have to remember here. But when 46% of American people believe that they deserve a guaranteed job for all provided by the government, that is a scary, scary statistic. Now, it could be because maybe we have gone through a little bit of a recession and people are struggling with jobs and looking for jobs, and they feel like they're a little left out. Maybe it's because of the mentality that we've been trained and we've been seasoned for by hating people that are rich, that are business owners, because as long as we hate them, then therefore they have more than us, so therefore we should continue to hate them until we equalize and redistribute all the wealth in the world and in the country in order to make everybody equally poor. And maybe we should do that, right? Maybe it's because of the progressives that continue to harp on someone like Donald Trump, who is very, very wealthy and has a very successful business, so we should continuously hate him. No matter what the circumstance is, I think we've been seasoned and we've been kind of combed into wanting to support this type of mentality. Then you have Bernie Sanders saying that we need all these free goodies and that we don't know how to pay for it, but we need to have them, and that it's going to be all right. It's going to be all great and hunky-dory, and we've never experienced socialism. We've never experienced this type of government mentality to where we're going to provide free goodies for you like this before. I don't know what the circumstance is of what's leading to this kind of poll. But when 46% of it, now, granted, this is only a 1,000-person poll, which I think is completely absurd of the fact that they're only polling 1,000 people and say, this is the representation of the entire American population. But that's what they're pushing now. And all the progressives are all up and giddy about this, the fact that almost 50% of the country believes in socialized, guaranteed jobs, meaning that if you do not have a job and you would like a job, then the government will guarantee and provide you. And you ever watch the show House of Cards? And you remember the program that the president did in that one, Frank Castle, and what he proposed? That was the Save America or the job renovation or whatever it was, to where if you didn't have a job, the government would find a job and provide it for you, and they would help with being able to help you get this job, and it may be a government-run job for a while. And how are we going to pay for all of this as everybody becomes all of a sudden a government employee? We are talking about absolute 100% full-on force socialism of saying that if you do not have a job, we'll get you a government job, which means that now you're going to be being paid, your salary is going to be paid for by taxpayers in the private sector, and we begin taking more people out of the private sector to be able to work for the government to provide a service. Pretty soon, no one's going to be in the private sector. Everyone's going to be in the public sector. No one's going to be getting paid because the government obviously doesn't create wealth, so therefore they can't pay the employees, and we're going to be saying, you know what, don't worry about any type of pay, don't worry about any type of compensation, you do the job, and then we'll provide you goods and resources. And it's going to be a full-on 100% nice little happy socialist utopia, right? That's their goal. That's what they want. And it starts with something like this, with saying 46% of Americans believe in the concept of the idea of a guaranteed job provided by the federal government if you are not able to get one. And I understand the scariness of this. It's a very scary situation. If you're a farmer, especially right now, all across the Mid-America region where we're broadcasting right now, if you're a farmer and you've been struggling and you've been fighting and you've been tightening the belt more and more every single year, and you see all these trade wars going on, and you see the commodity prices going down, and you see all these struggles, and you were trying to get secondary and third jobs just to be able to keep the farm going, if you're in that position and you're scared, then I understand that a lot of times being scared leads to looking for more security. And feeling that the government can provide something for you, or should be able to provide something for you, is a little bit of security. It's not, but it feels good to be that way. If you've been in aviation, you've been in construction, and maybe that industry hasn't been up to par lately, and you've been struggling to find jobs or find work in that industry, and you've been looking, and you got a family to provide for, and you've been doing whatever you can just to maintain and just get by, and you're trying to pay off debts, and you're trying to do whatever. You look for more security. You go to the government and say, yeah, I'd love to be able to have a guaranteed mandatory job. So that way, as long as if I lose a job, then I can go to this department, I can go to this agency, I can work for the federal government, I can go and poof, there it is. I got a paycheck and I'm working again. Fantastic. I'll never have to worry about being jobless again. It's a very nice emotional play to make us feel really good. The problem is it doesn't work. Nothing can be guaranteed. Nothing can be protected. Nothing can be secured. It's all on you. It's all on you. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. It's a very scary concept for even me myself. If I lose my job, if the radio station goes down and we end up shutting the doors and we can't broadcast anymore, what am I going to do? You know, you got the mortgage, you got the student loans, you got the baby, you got the wife, you got the kids, you got the family, you got the house, you got whatever. How are you going to? I don't know. Let's go and let's make sure that we got a guaranteed job afterwards. Let's make sure that we are secure in the fact that we will always have something. But that is a very dangerous concept to allow the government to be involved in something like that. We need to be very cautious when we say that we support a socialized concept of a mandatory guaranteed job provided by the government if you choose to do so, because that you may be unemployed or you may be struggling. We got to be very careful about that type of mentality. 316-721-8255. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you do agree with this kind of concept. Maybe you like the idea of knowing that if something happens with the economy, with the private sector, that we actually have something as a backup, as a safety net. Your thoughts on this when we come back. 316-721-8255. Let's get to today. It is the voice of reason. Stay right here.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today. It is a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration kicks off, my friends, and we do it right here on the program. 316-721-8255. Freelance journalist Jesse Meyerson wrote for MSNBC reporting and the Huffington Post. Unemployment blows. He says the easiest and most direct solution is for government to guarantee that everyone who wants to contribute productively to society is able to earn a decent living in the public sector. There you go. The question is, how do you fund the public sector in order to compensate for all the guaranteed jobs that people want? And if more and more people end up losing their jobs, I mean, remember, this is kind of like Obamacare. And this is exactly how it worked with Obamacare. If you have that option, if you want the option, it's there to go to the government health care. If not, you can keep your doctor if you want to keep your doctor. You can keep your health insurance. If you want to keep your health insurance, you can keep it. It's going to be all fine. It's going to be great. If you want to keep it there, you can, but that option's there. But, of course, they're not there to make the profit, so they can lowball everybody, running everybody out of the private sector, running everybody out of the private practitioners, running everybody out of the private insurance. They shut their doors. The only option left's the government. Terrible quality, and then it's really expensive. Shocker, right? It's going to be the same thing if we do guaranteed jobs. Oh, you know what? Yeah, you can get a job. It's going to be higher wages. It's going to be better benefits. You're going to have a union to represent you. Oh, it's going to all be fancy and hunky-dory. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. More people end up going there. Then the public sector has a lot more revenue that they have to bring in to be able to pay for the salaries. And then we squeeze the private sector more. That's going to shut down the businesses. It's going to run everybody out of town. They're all going to join the public sector. And then guess what? Then no one's going to be contributing to the public sector because they can't afford it. And then we're just going to say, you know what? We don't have the revenue for it. We're not going to pay you. We're just going to make everything free for you. And then you're just going to be working for the government. Do you realize the socialist utopia that's coming out of this, and the fact that 47% of Americans, which I would challenge that stat because they only polled 1,000 people out of 320 plus million individuals in the nation, but I would challenge that. But if it is 47% of Americans, then I would be very concerned as well about their mentality. And I really think it goes back to the whole follow the leader, monkey see, monkey do. This is the populist ideal right now. This is the really hip retro thing to believe in. So I guess I should just go ahead and believe in the same thing as well, with a little bit of fear thrown in there too of if I lose my job, what am I going to do? Your thoughts on this? Phones are lighting up. 316-721-8255, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Nick.
Nick, what's happening, sir?
Oh, I think what you might be describing would be the newest symptoms of government use disorder.
Ooh, I like that. Government use disorder. I like that mentality.
And so what we need to do is to have everybody recognize that if they're having symptoms of that, they need to be diagnosed with the mental illness and get on some weird synthetic medication to affect that.
That is true.
And I have Exhibit A for you.
Okay.
New Congress bill, Senate 2712, which would amend the National Agriculture Research Extension and Teaching Policy Act of 1977 to establish a farm and ranch stress assistance network and for other purposes. The Farmers First Act, which was introduced on the 19th of April and currently sponsored by Senator Jerry Moran. And it's being touted as this big thing because agricultural professionals are under a lot of stress and may need to have some the new catchphrase, mental health and behavioral health help from the government.
Sure. Yeah.
So instead of repealing cannabis prohibition and allowing the farmers to grow this seed and use it for whatever purpose they want to, they think they have this market under control, the agricultural market under control. And so because it's so stressful, they need to now have some extra behavioral mental health apparatus to help them along the way instead of having free and fair markets, having limited government, having individual liberty, and all the things that we preach about as conservatives. So you see that we are still being trained today.
Well, that's a great point, and I'm glad you bring up the whole diagnosis of this because you're right. It seems like mental illness seems to be or mental health or mental illness seems to be kind of the retro thing today is if you don't believe in a certain way, then you are probably mentally ill. We've talked about the masculinity just a few days ago, that if you are not, if you have too much masculinity, then the latest study, according to the University of Texas, says that you are mentally unhealthy and that you need to actually check your identity, your gender identity, and your masculinity at the door, and that we need to have our masculinity confession booths. Now we have the fact of the lack thereof, according to the progressives, mental illnesses when it comes to some of the transgenderism like we talked about yesterday, and I want to replay that interview in a bit here as well. And now we have the fact that if you are highly stressed at work and if you are a part of the agricultural community and you go through a lot of stress because of commodity prices and the expenses that go along with being a farmer and so on and so forth, then you probably need some mental health as well. So this is a mental a deficiency, if we want to put it that way, and let's prescribe them someone. If they believe in government guaranteed jobs, then I think we should prescribe them something, and that is a very large dose of freedom and liberty and private sector capitalism that once they take that a few times, then maybe they'll stick around with it.
Today is National Day of Prayer. Let's go right back to that and realize that we don't need that stuff. We need more prayer.
Ooh, I like that too. I love it, Nick. I appreciate the call, my friend. Got some more on the line here. Hang tight. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Don't go anywhere. There you go. Your thoughts on the guaranteed jobs provided by the government. How are we going to pay for them? What are we going to do? It doesn't matter, though. Let's just provide it for everybody because, well, heck, that'll solve our problem by increasing the bureaucratic state with more public sector workers, right? Yeah.
If Andy drives you nuts,
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
let him know. Call the show, 721-8255. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
What's happening? 36 minutes past the hour. Welcome into it on a Thursday, the pre-Friday celebration. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Hang tight. We'll get you there. Don't you worry. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you can still comment if you want to about the guaranteed jobs by the federal government and the fact that 47% of Americans actually believe in that idea because they don't want to go without a job, which is a good thing. They don't want to go without a job, but we're looking in the wrong place. The government's not the place to look for it, but what do you do? Oh, well. I want to shift gears just for a minute here, though. We talked with yesterday. We love playing the interview that we did yesterday in the first hour here, so that way everybody in the western part of the state and beyond and outside of the state of Kansas, everybody can hear it again. But yesterday we had an interesting conversation with an author of the book When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender movement, Dr. Ryan Anderson. He's been on to big outlets, Fox News, ABC, NBC, all these big TV outlets. He's a big writer. He's a journalist. He's a political philosopher and wrote a book on the transgender movement. And it was kind of interesting to see what we've been doing to where we came to this point with transgenderism, where it came from. How do we counter this argument? Because remember, if you say that you don't believe in transgenderism, then of course you're a bigot. Then you're just a terrible, horrible bigot and closed-minded person that just doesn't support people's lifestyles, which we need to, that's just not the case. That's not true in any way, shape, or form. So yesterday we sat down with him. He is Dr. Ryan Anderson, author of the book When Harry Became Sally. We sat down with him right here on The Voice of Reason. Dr. Anderson on the line with us. Ryan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Before we even get into some of the what's in the book, I have to ask, I mean, I never thought that the time would come when we have to defend the fact that we have a gender and that it's very easy to look at what that gender is, and the fact that we have people arguing that you can really be whatever kind of gender you want to.
It's amazing how quickly things have moved. Just within the past couple of years, most Americans had never really had a serious conversation about gender identity or gender dysphoria or transgender identities. And then the last year of the Obama administration, it became a civil right. The Civil Rights Division at the Department of Education and the Department of Justice were telling all of our nation's public schools that they have to redo bathroom, locker room, and sports team policies based on a student's gender identity, not the student's biology. And you and I and our listeners were bigots if we didn't go along with this. If we had any reservations, if we had any questions, if we had any concerns about giving teenage girls testosterone, giving teenage boys puberty-blocking drugs.
Unbelievable.
That's where we are.
I've never thought that we would come to this time. And we have, I mean, the universities now. Now, I'm a millennial. I'm 29 years old. And when I was in college, I don't remember seeing this nearly as drastic as what we're seeing right now. Because, I mean, here in Kansas, I mean, we have Kansas University, KU, to where they have the pronoun preference name tags to where you put down what pronoun you'd prefer to be referred to as. Because many people may be offended if you actually call them something of which they do not self-identify as. Then we see from the LGBTQ community come out with their gender-neutral pronouns, which I don't even remember what they are, and we've tried to learn them, but they come out because if you try and say something about it's a boy or a girl, then they get completely offended. Then we talk about even trying to get rid of the genders on a birth certificates. It is, as you mentioned, it's come up quickly, and it's blown out of proportion, and I don't know how we get back from all this shenanigans.
Well, I mean, one place where we get back is by looking at the actual facts. You know, looking at the science, looking at the medicine, looking at the philosophy, looking at the reason underlying this. Right? It's appropriate that your show is the voice of reason. We need to look at what's the truth about the human person and about the human nature and the human body. Is it good or is it bad to block puberty in a young child who has gender confusion? Is it good or is it bad to give testosterone to a teenage girl? Is it good or is it bad to perform a mastectomy on an 18-year-old girl who thinks she's a boy? Mm-hmm. That's how we get back to sanity here, because most people, whether they're conservative or liberal, Republican or Democrat, they don't want their child going through this. Sure. They don't want their son coming home from school saying that he's a girl trapped in a boy's body. They don't want their girl coming home from school saying there's a boy in my bathroom.
Sure.
This is just something that's common sense. And so I think to a certain extent, what's really necessary here is for people to know what the facts are, to be having that confidence, to speak common sense, and don't care if people call you a bigot or people call you a transphobic or whatever. The truth is more important here.
Sure. Talk about what the activists actually say. The only argument that I've heard about this, and this has been by social media dialogue and debate, where I've actually been able to get a little bit of an answer from somebody, but when the activists advocate for this, they've come down to say that it's a mental issue because they feel it, so therefore, because the brain actually your brain actually controls you and what you actually believe and feel and so on and so forth, that it doesn't matter what your biology says or what your gender actually says or your chromosomes actually are in your body. It's mentally what your brain tells you think you are, and therefore we should make the body morph to what the brain wants as opposed to make the brain understand what the body actually is. Is that the argument that you've heard as well?
That's one of the arguments, and so they'll make the argument that the brain has a different sex than the rest of the body, even though there's no evidence for this.
Okay.
The response, and this is the response that many medical doctors make, is that why should we treat gender dysphoria differently than any other body image struggle?
Sure.
So take the high school girl who thinks she's overweight, who thinks she's obese, who thinks she's ugly, who's struggling with anorexia. No one says that the appropriate response is to give that girl liposuction. They say the appropriate response is to help that girl recognize the truth about her body, that she's not overweight, that she's not ugly, to help her control those thoughts and those feelings and those urges when they come, to help her align her thoughts and her feelings with reality, including the reality of her body. And then they say the same thing is true for the teenage girl who's struggling with her gender identity. Right? It's not to transform her body with puberty-blocking drugs or testosterone or even surgery. It's to help her line up her thoughts and her feelings with the reality of her body, help her feel comfortable being the girl who she is, help her manage the urges when they might come, and help her develop a more mature understanding of sex and gender.
Sure.
Especially in small kids, frequently it's based on bad stereotypes. So if you're a little boy who likes dolls, that means you're a girl trapped in a boy's body. Right. No, what we can say is boys are allowed to like dolls. Girls are allowed to like trucks. It doesn't mean you're the opposite sex.
Sure. That's a great point, and that's where we've really taken things to the extreme for sure. So I guess the question is, from the scientific level, what makes us a man or a woman? Is it just being able to look down and see what we have? I know that a very, very, very small percentage of the population has gender problems where either they, when it comes to the male or the female figure, that they may not have the normal male-female type of biology. But other than that, what makes us a man or a woman? Is it simple as looking down, or does it go a little bit deeper than that?
It goes all the way down to the molecular level, and it starts at conception. So the fourth chapter of the book, really goes through the science of what makes us a man and a woman, and those instances, as you mentioned, of disorders of sexual development. And the basic answer here is that our sex is determined starting at conception with the chromosomes that we inherit from our mother and our father. Those chromosomes then start developing in utero certain sex organs, which then produce certain sex hormones, which then lead to the development of certain sexual reproductive systems, certain external genitalia. And all of this is in place by, let's say, week 20, so that an ultrasound technician at the 20-week ultrasound can tell parents if they're having a boy or a girl. Contrary to what the activists are saying, sex isn't assigned at birth. And you're now seeing them claim this. They want to claim that sex is merely assigned at birth, and therefore modern medicine can reassign sex.
Sure.
The truth of the matter is that sex starts developing when we start developing. And it's based on how we're organized with respect to sexual reproduction.
Sure.
And there are two ways of being organized, a male and a female way. There are two gametes, sperm and egg. There are two sets of sex chromosomes, and that's why there are two sexes, male and female.
Mm-hmm. What about, as you mentioned, this is a relatively new movement. What about the young kids that are starting to grow up to where the parents are advocating to take the gender off of their birth certificates, and they want them to be able to choose as they get older and want them to choose what gender they actually want to be as they get older, and try to influence them on both sides of the aisle of boy toys and girl toys at the same time, and then whichever they choose, and they want to try and lump them into that category. What kind of effects will that have on the child? Can we anticipate as they get older if this continues?
Sure. So what the best science really shows here is that for most kids who do have a gender identity conflict, 80 to 95% of the time they'll naturally grow out of it if you don't do anything to kind of lock it in.
Sure.
So if you just give your child the time and the space to explore and to develop, and maybe they go through a stage when they're engaging in more stereotypically feminine activities than masculine, just let them continue developing, let them continue maturing, let them continue growing, and they'll 2 years later be identifying with now a stereotypically masculine activity. But if you give your child a new name and a new pronoun, you give your child a new wardrobe, you give your child puberty-blocking drugs, you give your teenager the opposite sex's sex chromosomes or hormones, you could very well be reinforcing the transgender identity. You could be blocking the developmental mechanisms that would ordinarily let your child develop into what his or her body is, a male or a female. And so that's where a lot of bad advice is being given to parents. I think frequently these parents aren't activists or ideologues, but the medical experts they're seeing who run these gender clinics, especially the pediatric gender clinics, they're largely driven by ideology,
sure,
not by evidence-based science or medicine.
Dr. Anderson, I know we're short on time here, but last question that before we let you go, as you mentioned before, I mean, the question is, how do we fight this and how do we get back to normality in a bit? And I guess it really is just looking at some of the science and looking at the facts and trying to get that word out, isn't it?
It is, and it's not being afraid by bullies on the left to silence yourself. One of the main techniques the left has used on this issue is to attack anyone who would speak up, and so as a result, we self-censor. We silence ourselves. If this topic comes up at a Little League game, if this topic comes up at a PTA meeting, if this topic comes up around the water cooler at work, it's important that you're willing to speak the truth, to help educate, to let other people know that you think what they think and that they don't have to cower in silence. It's important that we all play our part on this.
There it is, Dr. Anderson, author of the book When Harry Became Sally. Great conversation we had yesterday. We appreciate him joining us. We got some calls lighting up talking about that and more. We'll get to you as soon as we come back as we take a break, wrapping up hour number 1 of The Voice of Reason. Lots more coming up. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Into the Voice of Reason, 6 minutes to the top of the hour. Great to have you along today. It is a Thursday. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go right to the phones as we wrap up hour number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, it's Deacon.
What's happening, Deacon? How you doing?
Oh, it's a beautiful day, brother.
Absolutely.
This whole gender dysphoria or whatever they're calling it now, the way it looks to me is just another attempt for liberals to kill God. Because if God can make a mistake on something as basic as whether or not you're a male or a female, then really there is no God.
Well, that's a good point. Now, whether they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, that is really what's happening and coming across that way. I mean, if you're doing it unintentionally, then whether you believe in God or whether you just believe in evolution and nature, the fact that we've gone millions and millions and millions and millions of years where we have two sexes that reproduce and that continue on the species to be able to actually exist, and now all of a sudden we're questioning that and thinking that either species can do really whatever it wants to do. That's not how we've evolved. I mean, there are some species like the seahorse, for example, where the male carries the eggs before they actually are born, sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that every animal in the animal kingdom is like that, because every different species has its own way of actually carrying its offspring, whether it's an egg, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's whatever. And humans, for the beginning of time, whether you believe in God or whether you believe in evolution, believes in the fact that we have a male and a female, where the female has the womb and the male has the thing to impregnate the womb, and that's how we actually reproduce. And it's the most basic of actual commonsensicalism. And if we don't believe in that, then I think that we've gone off the rails a little bit.
You cannot, and right to what you're saying, you cannot have say you have all males on one island and all females on another. They're going to die off.
It's not going to happen. Yeah, you're not going to last for very long, are you?
Exactly. You've got to have both sexes, and there is no in between. I mean, yes, there are genetic misfires every now and then where you have someone who is born with both sets, but that is so rare, it's ridiculous.
Less than 0.5% of the population.
Right. So I've never met one, and I'm almost 50 years old. So they're not that popular. But if you can say that you don't need men to carry on the species, or you don't need women to carry on the species, you're a fool.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is no, you can look androgynous and you can act androgynous, but if you die and you go in the ground and 100 years from now you don't have any meat left on your bones, they come and dig you up. They can tell from your bones whether or not you're a male or a female, because if you're a female, you got an extra rib and wider hips.
Right. It's just basic common sense. You're right. The mentality that anybody can be anything that they want to, and that their brain is actually what's legit. So therefore, you need to make the body mirror what the brain wants, as opposed to making the brain accept what the body actually is, because that's what biologically you were given, whether through God or whether through natural selection or whether through evolution or whatever you want to believe. And it doesn't matter to me. I don't really care. But it doesn't go that way. You have to make the brain accept what the body is, rather than trying to look, doing hormone treatments, blocking hormones, and injecting the wrong type of hormones to try and force the body to do something is not a natural way for a progressive, and especially for the progressive that believe in naturalism in the natural way, instead of in synthetic things or the pharmaceutical industry or so on and so forth. They are going against everything they believe in by trying to force that down them, as opposed to just letting the body grow naturally.
One more point, and then I'll let somebody else jump in. But these couples, these same-sex couples who are adopting young children, and then like out in California, the lesbian couple who adopted the little boy and convinced him that he wanted to be a girl, so they started doing the hormone therapy. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a pony.
But remember, now there's people that actually, you're right, there's people that actually believe in that type of thing now as well. I mean, you've seen the ones that actually that truly honestly believe they're a dog, or that they believe that they're a whatever, a pony, or it doesn't matter. They believe that they are, and therefore, again, mentally, if they believe it, then not only should they just live, and again, I said this yesterday, if they live in that world in their own home, I don't really care. Live however you want to with your own lifestyle in your home. It makes no difference to me, but don't come into the general public and expect me to accept that and change everything that we see as common sense in society just because that's the way you feel, and that your reality should be now everyone else's reality, when that's just not the case.
And don't force your twisted mentality onto a child who is too young to decide what they want to do with their own life.
Amen to that, my friend Deacon. I appreciate it very much. I love it. Great points. That's the way we roll. Lots more coming up. There's the big news coming up in hour number 2. Stay tuned. We'll talk about all this and more when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
It's time for Reason.
Why would we give the ability for the Supreme Court to come back and say it's not adequate enough, and be able to consume as much of the budget as they possibly want to for education, and then for everybody else to get the scraps and the leftovers? Why have we not focused on the Kansas Supreme Court's constitutional amendment to limit the power of the Supreme Court? Why is that not the number one priority and the only priority that we've had when it comes to educational finance?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Back into The Voice of Reason. Hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker. 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on KGBT TV, channel 2610. What's happening? Great to have you along today on a Thursday morning. The pre-Friday celebration is officially here. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's have a little fun today. What do you say? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We have the Facebook Live feed that's up and rolling today. It looks like a lot of people jumping on there, which we love and appreciate it. Welcome in. Leave a comment, ask a question, like it, share it onto your own page. Let's spread the word, baby. Let's make it a good one and have a little fun. Coming up in hour number 3, it's going to be an interesting, and I like to do this every once in a while. I know some people roll their eyes and shake their head and call me a dork, but I don't really care. I like it, and therefore we're going to do it just every once in a while. And we've tried to book him a few times, and he was unavailable, so this was the only day they really had available. So we're going to be talking with him in the 8 o'clock hour. James Abbott, he is the author of the book, The Outsider's Guide to UFOs. Ooh. The UFO talk. So we'll have some fun with that in the 8 o'clock hour. But lots to get to today, a lot to get to in this hour, as there's a lot of big news happening at the statewide level along with the national level as well. But let's start off with hour number 2 of the phone call. What do you say? 316-721-8255. It is open lines to you for this hour. So whatever's on your mind, you're more than welcome to chime in. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I
Very
just
good.
woke up and listened to the radio, and I heard Rick tell me he had a time machine, and today is Wednesday.
Yeah, he had a little news snafu. So yeah, that was not the appropriate one, but we're back on track now, so all is well.
It is Thursday. Everybody.
It is Thursday. Yes, it is Thursday. The pre-Friday excitement that we get to enjoy today is not Wednesday. Do not worry or fret because that you're back a day again.
Well, the important thing about the world is that Doctor Who is fiction, and eventually Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer will also become fiction.
Wouldn't that be nice? Boy, that's going to happen soon, ain't it?
I hope so.
It really is. It really is. So I think that we have a major I know they're talking about this blue wave that's going to be happening in this midterm election this year. I don't see it actually happening. I see Nancy Pelosi still being in the minority. I see Dick Durbin. I see Chuck Schumer. I see Harry Reid. I see all these individuals being in the minority again after this election because I see here's my prediction. It's a crazy wild prediction. I almost see the Republicans gaining more seats than what they actually do in the House and the Senate. So that way we have a bigger majority because of what Donald Trump is doing right now and the opportunity that we could have for the Republicans to actually get something done with the Trump administration and without as much of an obstructionist mentality from the Democrats.
I remember when I was a kid growing up, the big hot news at the movie theater, they called it movie tone news, and
Sure.
you would see film from actually only a day or two before from Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and they had all the films of the retreat from the Yalu River and all the other things over there that are going on. And
Sure.
if we can actually get the world and get North Korea to go, and it sounds like North and South Korea are actually talking about becoming Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And, North Korea, will be a nice province, but they're not going to run the whole peninsula. And,
Sure.
And I am glad to see that at least the South Korean, and his name is Un, I believe.
Moon Jae-in, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, he's already said, Mr. Trump ought to,
Get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Nobel Peace Prize, because can you imagine this war has been going on since longer than I've been alive almost.
Sure.
I'm 72 years old, and the war's been going on for 65 years.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. I mean, they've had a conflict for a really long time, and the fact that we're ending this now, again, I'm very skeptical still about how Kim Jong-un's actually treating this and being all happy hunky dory and being so happy working together and not actually being the little jerk that he usually is, and little rocket man, as Donald Trump likes to call him. So I am a little concerned on that front. And Jim, I appreciate the call. I want to get to another one here as well. But I mean, he's making some ground, and as long as we keep a close eye on him and he doesn't try and pull the wool over our eyes, then I think we're in good shape. And North Korea didn't necessarily say that he needs a Nobel Peace Prize, but he did give credit to President Trump for allowing this to happen. And now what do we see in the news? The fact that now North Korea is moving some of their U.S. detainees from a prison to a hotel in Pyongyang, and that they may be released to the United States. And if we're releasing some of our prisoners of war or our detainers, the detainments that we have of U.S. citizens that are held over there, then that's kind of a good sign as well, isn't it? So that'll be interesting to see whether it happens or not. But again, score one for President Trump, and the fact that he doesn't have any type of involvement in this in any way, shape, or form. Right? Yeah. 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. Carl.
Carl Peterjohn. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great. Did
Good.
you happen to see the Rudy Giuliani interview on Hannity last night?
I saw a little bit of that. Yeah, Rudy Giuliani now I was a little confused. He's one of Trump's attorneys now, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so he's one of Trump's attorneys, and he's been now helping defend him when it comes to this whole Stormy Daniels case and everything else going on. And it seemed like a really good interview that he had with Sean Hannity, and he kind of really brought some stuff to light.
Well, it's incredible, and it's incredible how the national news media is distorting it, Andy, because the major points that I think Giuliani was trying to make was that, the only crimes that have been uncovered so far have been within the U.S. justice system, either the FBI, the top levels, let me emphasize, the top levels of the FBI and the Department of Justice. The second thing is, and this is probably most important, we have a three-tier justice system that we're moving towards. And the way Giuliani said it, and of course he's a former U.S. attorney, former senior Deputy Justice Department official during the Reagan administration. So he's not just some guy getting in off the street, Andy. But he said there's three levels of justice. You had the special treatment that you had for Hillary Clinton, I'd say also Bill Clinton and all the rest of her staff who basically get the kid glove set up. You've got the treatment that the average citizen has, and Giuliani said, and then you've got the treatment that that President Trump's got. Now, I disagree with Giuliani, and this is a minor point. I'd say it's not just President Trump. I'd say it's any elected Republican who's in Washington at this point.
Sure.
If a Republican jaywalks, it becomes a front page story on the in the national news media because there may have been an accident 3 blocks away, and it was instigated because of that horrible Republican jaywalker out there. But the key point, Andy, I'd like to throw out to your listeners, if they look on the news, it's all you're hearing about is Stormy Daniels, and I think it's the comments that if you read the transcript or watch the full tape of the Giuliani interview, his comments about the U.S. Justice Department and taken as a whole from the FBI to the lawyers and the DOJ, Giuliani's comments are absolutely devastating to any sort of a real republic that we should be in. The corruption, the deep state, the swamp between the media side of it and the institutional bureaucracy up there where they're stonewalling Congress and not turning over documents. Andy, we are living in a horrible, horrible times, and the attention that Giuliani tried to put on it, I think it's being distorted media-wise, but I urge your listeners to be a little bit ahead of the curve and check out the whole transcript or watch the rebroadcast because it's devastating, Andy.
Well, it is, and you know what? It really brings to light. Everybody laughs and kind of shakes off all the comments that Donald Trump makes on Twitter when he's going on his little, tweeting escapades, and he always makes all these absurd, ridiculous comments. But when he made the comment saying that this entire thing is a setup. And I think he's right, and as you mentioned, with him actually making these comments last night, meeting Rudy Giuliani on Fox News and on Sean Hannity's show, that when you talk about having a setup, it really is them trying to come out and trying to set him up for failure and trying to make sure that it is everything that they can do to be able to get him out of office. Because now we saw the story about how the Republicans are terrified, and Donald Trump's so concerned about losing the majority of Republicans in the House, so that way the Democrats can start talking about it. Impeachment process because they're that desperate to remove him from office.
Well, Andy, I hope the next election, then in November of this year, the Democrats running for the U.S. House and Senate focus on the fact that they want to impeach Trump. I think that would be it shows the difference between getting a pro-American, pro-jobs, pro-strong economy, pro-making this country safe again from foreign threats, contrasted with, we're unhappy about the election results from 2016, and we want to overturn them by impeaching Trump.
Sure.
And we're in challenging times, Andy.
Well, that we are. We're in very challenging times, and look, we can get a good grasp on it, and if we actually stay engaged and active and we actually learn about these issues and actually follow them, we'll be able to make the proper judgments on them. But if we don't, then whatever the mainstream media tells us could be very dangerous because we could be making some very, very bad decisions. Carl, I appreciate the call, my friend. Let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I want to shift gears a little bit back to some of the statewide issues. There's a story that, of course, the progressives in the state of Kansas are all up in arms about, and the media is all hyped up about, all excited about the fact that Kris Kobach, Secretary of State, can pay contempt costs with state money as opposed to actually having to fund it for his contempt in court out of his personal pockets after lawmakers drop a ban that they were working on at the legislative level. We'll talk about that and an executive order that Governor Jeff Collier came out with yesterday as well, when it comes to background checks and individuals with a criminal history and a criminal record getting state employee jobs. We'll talk about all that and more, plus more of your phone calls at 316-721-8255. 18 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. Stay here.
The voice of reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
23 minutes past the hour. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. By the way, remember, coming up in, about 20 minutes, half an hour, we will be giving away, it is Thursday, brought to you by Riverside Cafe. 3 locations, 2 in Wichita, 1 in Derby here. We will be giving away a complimentary free burger and fries at Riverside Cafe. That coming up after the bottom of the hour, so stay tuned in for that one. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in here, I have to comment on this. This is hilarious. I find it comical, at least. Maybe some other people get all worked up about it. They seem to get very temperamental about these sorts of things, and social media especially, they get all emotional, and they go to their cry closets, and they go to their safe space, and they just get all worked up about certain things. I find it quite comical. Here's the headline that I found from the Wichita Eagle. Kobach can pay contempt costs with state money after lawmakers drop ban. Oh, mon Dieu! The legislature's decision to drop the effort means Kobach will be able to use state money to pay any fines stemming from being found in contempt of court. Now, if you remember, it was the big deal of the fact that he was being held in contempt of court because of the fact that he presented evidence that was apparently not given to the other side, and that he was doing it in a different order or a different style of what the judge necessarily liked, so they put him in contempt of court. It was really just a show. It was a political show to try and demonize him, to make him look bad, and try to take a little jab at him because they had the opportunity to do so. He really didn't do anything wrong. It was just the court found him in contempt of court because he just had a little bit different style. So what? Not a big deal. They'll probably give him a little slap on the wrist, give him a little fine, and be on the way. Now, they want him to pay for it out of his own personal money, but now he's able to pay for it through the government, and everybody's all up in arms with the fact that, oh my gosh, we're paying his contempt of court through our taxpayer money. Oh my gosh. Which I find ironic, because number one, the reason that he's in court in the first place is because of his job as Secretary of State. The lawsuit's against the Secretary of State's position, not necessarily him himself, because it's about the case that he's working on through his job. So it's work-related. Would you pay for something work-related like this out of a lawsuit with your own personal cash when you were doing this and defending what you did on the job? No, that's the most basic concept that we can actually have. You actually did this through your job. You're representing yourself as the Secretary of State for the state of Kansas, and now you're in a lawsuit. You got held in contempt of court. The Secretary of State's office is going to be the one paying for this. Now, I don't know how much the contempt of court's actually going to be. It's not going to be that much. A couple $100, maybe like $1,000, but I highly doubt it. But I'm guessing a couple $100, and that'll be it. A little slap on the wrist. Hey, you know what? Follow my rules next time. That's all the example they're trying to make out of this. And ironically, the stories that I'm reading, all the mainstream media news, are not reporting on how much money is actually going to be as the contempt of court fine that's going to be in here. They're not saying it, whether they don't know yet or whether they just don't want to disclose it because they're trying to make a bigger issue out of something that's very, very small. And we have to, when we read these kind of stories, the big radar, the big light should pop up on above our heads and say, wait a second, this is shenanigans they're trying to pull on us here with the media, trying to yet again demonize one of our elected officials in the state of Kansas. They did it with Brownback day in and day out for no apparent reason, for really, 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 really stupid stuff. And now they're doing it with Kris Kobach, as they have been for a while as well. The Secretary of State's position was defending his position on what he did on the job with the position that he was taking and what he was trying to advocate for against the ACLU. Period. End of story. So if you're found in contempt of court as a work-related position, then the state of Kansas and the Secretary of State's position will be funding this contempt of court fine, whatever it may be, which is not going to be very much. The second point that we need to really look at here is the fact that it is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable, that we have a legislature that was going to put into a bill and pass it, forcing Secretary of State Kris Kobach to pay for his contempt of court fines in the courts out of his own pocket, and that we shouldn't be using taxpayer-funded money to go towards litigation of a fine in the courts by taxpayer money. The fact that they wanted to put that in legislation in the legislature, they were willing to do that, but they're not willing to sign and pass a constitutional amendment to actually stop litigation for educational funding by our own taxpayer money, to sue ourselves for the state of Kansas for more money from ourselves. That they can't pass that, but they can try and pass a bill to force Secretary of State Kris Kobach to pay for litigation out of his own pocket when it comes to being held in contempt of court. It boggles the mind, the absolute hypocrisy and stupidity sometimes that comes out of our state legislature. And this almost passed, by the way. This almost went through. It actually did go through the House with over 100 votes. We can't get 30 votes for a constitutional amendment to limit the Supreme Court's power and limit the idea of the fact that we can't sue ourselves for more money from the state of Kansas with our own taxpayer money. We can't get 30 votes for that in the House, but we can get 100 votes in the House trying to say that Kris Kobach needs to pay for his court costs out of his own pocket as a Secretary of State. It's unbelievable. This really shows the priority of what the progressives and the moderate Republicans and whoever else that don't actually care about this entire educational issue the right way, the real way. It really shows their priority, doesn't it? Shows the priority of what they can. They can't limit the Supreme Court because they're too weaselly, they're too soft, they're too weak. And yes, I'm saying it, and I hope every single legislature in Topeka is listening to this right now. You're too weak to actually pass it. And I'm sorry, but our leadership that said that they weren't going to even look at educational funding until we passed the constitutional amendment. Then they said that they would pass the legislation and then look at the constitutional amendment. And now they're saying they're not even going to do it this year at all, even though everybody knows that that is the number one priority that we should have done at the very beginning of the legislative session. Now we're not even going to look at it. We can't pass that, but we can almost get 100. We can get 100 votes out of the House to make Kris Kobach pay for his own lawsuit issues out of his own pocket, as opposed to using the office of the Secretary of State to cover the expenses. What kind of priorities do we have? Got some calls online. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Bottom of the hour news. This is the Voice of Reason.
Weeding through the fake news on a daily basis.
I hope now you boys see that this is totally serial.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into it right here on the Big Talker KQAM. It is a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration rolls right along, and we're glad that you're here with us. We love it. We appreciate it. The big family at KQAM and the Voice of Reason can't get any better than this. 316-721-8255. State Representative Troy Waymaster, Bunker Hill Republican. So we just felt it probably best to go ahead and remove that item, meaning the agenda to force Secretary of State Kris Kobach to pay for his contempt of court out of his own pocket, as opposed to allowing him to use the funds from the Secretary of State's office to cover that. We felt it would just probably be best to go ahead and remove that item, even though it did pass with more than 100 votes on the House floor. We made our statement. Yeah, you made your statement. You can make a statement on something petty like that, trying to make someone pay for their work-related item out of their own pockets and out of their own expenses, but you have not made a statement. You've yet to make a statement when it comes to actually limiting the court's power of being able to sue the Kansas taxpayers with our own Kansas taxpayer money for more Kansas taxpayer money. You've yet to make your statement on that one. So well done. Well done. At least we have our priorities set the right way in the state of Kansas, right? 316-721-8255. I'm not just attacking this individual, but the entire legislature. If we can get 100 votes on a ridiculous item like this to make a quote-unquote bold statement, but yet we can't vote on something more important that's actually, I don't know, the entire reason that we've been stagnant this entire legislative session this year, then we have other issues. We have deeper problems, do we not? 316-721-8255. Let's go right to the phones as they are lighting up line number one. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Helen, how are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
Well, all of these current event issues that you keep bringing up are the Lord foretold us that all this kind of stuff would happen in these last days. So it should not be a shock to us, but because he foretold us it would happen. And he says in Jeremiah 17, verse 5, thus saith the Lord, cursed is the man that trusteth trusteth in man, humankind. I mean, we're just unbelievable how. And then in verse 9, Jeremiah 17:9, the heart or the mind and intellect is deceitful or easily deceived above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Well, of course, the Lord God knows it. So all of this deception that's going on, and also in Revelation 12:9, he says, and Satan was deceived with the whole world. So the world is falling into Satan's deceptions, transgender, political, everything that's going on. It's just, God foretold us that this would happen in these last days. Also, a point about the UFOs, unidentified flying objects. Well, Ezekiel chapter 13, there's no unidentified flying objects with the Lord God. He knows exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not unidentified to him. No, that's a funny point. Helen, I appreciate the call there. No, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening that seem to be out of our hands, and all we can do is best try to manage them in many cases. It is frustrating that people have completely lost their minds and that we don't even have common sense anymore, which is why, I mean, me, who's not the most intelligent individual, but at least tries to link dots of common sense and normality to some degree, can actually be on the radio and talking without people being like, well, duh. And some people probably already do that, Andy, duh. But others are like, what are you talking about? And we do have coming up in hour number 3, talking about the UFO thing. It is kind of fun. We will be talking to James Abbott, author of the book, The Outsider's Guide to UFOs. He'll be joining us in the third hour. We'll have a little fun with that one. Helen, I appreciate it very much. Let's go back to the phones here. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. This is Sean.
Sean, what's happening, sir?
It's all fake outrage.
All fake outrage. You think just a bit, just to try and stir the pot a little bit?
It's exactly, because this fine costs the state nothing. It's taking money out of one state account, putting it into another state account.
That's true.
The only money that was spent on this thing is pursuing it.
Right.
So if they were outraged about how much money the state now has to pay, that they don't, they should be asking, how much money do we spend to try to get this money that we don't have to pay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, you're right. I mean, maybe we should have blocked it and said, you know what, ACLU, sorry, but we're not going to hear this case because, number one, it's absurd, and number two, you're going to be wasting taxpayer money on a ridiculous lawsuit if you're that concerned about the actual funds. It's funny how progressives are never concerned about budgets or funds or the revenue or the tax rates or anything, and when it comes to their nice little pet projects, but as soon as it comes to something that they don't like with this false outrage like you mentioned, that all of a sudden, oh, now we're concerned and you're wasting taxpayer money. You've been wasting taxpayer money for how many years right now on litigation trying to sue ourselves for more money for education?
Yeah, now let's take it to the next step here. Maybe they've got a point here. Maybe it needs to be the same in that all employees of the state have to pay their costs while they're in office, kind of like teachers have to pay for supplies when they're in the classroom.
Ooh, there you go. I like that one too. You're right. I mean, if they're having to pay for it out of pocket, then maybe we should have everything being paid out of pocket. When the legislatures go up to Topeka and they actually have to stay in a hotel for a week because they're not home. And Sean, I appreciate the call there, Sean. When they actually go up there during the week during the legislative session and they're in there, maybe they need to be paying for their hotel rooms out of pocket as opposed to the taxpayer money. Maybe when we purchase different equipment, maybe when the Kansas Department of Transportation has to buy the trucks, maybe the local branch or the local shop in certain areas need to pay for their own trucks as opposed to actually the state providing it for. Let's just do all of it. Let's get rid of all the state spending, and you know what? It's a waste of government spending. That's a waste of taxpayer money spending, and you need to do it personally and privately on your own. Let's go that road then, if you're going to complain about this. But you're right, it's really not any more money or wasting any money. You're going from one department, the Kansas Secretary of State's office, to another department with the judiciary system and the judge to pay a court fine that's going to stay in the Kansas government anyways. So we're really not wasting any money. It's just transferring from one to another. And yet the Democrats are all up in arms. I like the way you put it, Sean, with the false outrage, trying to get people riled up about how this is such a big issue and that we're wasting Kansas taxpayer money for the fact that Kris Kobach got contempt of court and the fines that he had to accrue there. You're right. Let's start making everything personalized, and you have to pay for everything out of pocket, for our legislators, for our trucks, for the KDOT, for everything else that comes out of the government, all the computers. sitting there at DCF that apparently can't track children when we lose children all over the state. I guess we have to start paying for those out of pocket, right? Let's start doing it. Let's start weeding out some of the spending altogether, because that is the priority for you, right, Democrats? Right? Progressives? That's what I thought. 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phones. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Nate.
Nate, what's going on, sir?
Oh, I just wanted to drop in my 2 cents.
Sure.
One of the things that's kind of funny is our legislature is wanting to have him pay for upholding the Constitution and doing what is right when it comes to voter fraud and stuff like that. Yet they're unwilling to do their constitutional duty and rein in the courts when the courts are out of control.
Right. Oh, exactly. No, they want to demonize him because they do not like him. They refuse to allow him to be governor if he ends up becoming governor, even the Republican candidate by this fall. They want to trash him as much as they can. They want to get the stories out so that way the progressives are all riled up. I saw this story not only just from the Wichita Eagle where I pulled it, but I saw it linked to all the progressive media sites on social media. Any Democrats who despise Kris Kobach on social media sharing it, saying, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that my taxpayer money is going to this guy and that we're covering this and this and that and the other, and it's absolutely unbelievable. But yet I have yet heard a single bit of outrage, except for a few conservatives in the legislature, to rise up and say, wait a second, we've wasted over $7 million of taxpayer-funded money to go towards the courts to sue ourselves, the Kansas taxpayers, for more money into the education system because the Kansas Supreme Court has overstepped its bounds on what they can do when it comes to educational funding and the power of the purse. No one, not the media, not the progressives, no one's outraged at that fact because that's just common sense. You just better abide by the Supreme Court, and we're going to do it all over again. But how dare that Kris Kobach get a $300 fine and that he actually gets to use the Kansas Secretary of State's office to actually pay for it?
Well, it's kind of interesting because if you understand the history of how things were done, we have 3 branches of government, but I heard you say it the other day, but they're not actually co-equal. If you read Federalist 78, they actually designed the courts to be the weakest, and that was actually the Supreme Court. All the other courts are actually created by the legislature. Congress created the courts. Mm-hmm. They're actually under Congress's purview. And Congress can rein them in and actually has the duty to rein them in.
Because the Founding Fathers understood that the courts can be and can turn into one of the most powerful branches of the government, because we're supposed to have that checks and balances system. And right now, the Kansas government right now, we're sitting here thinking that when the Supreme Court makes a decision like educational funding, that's it, end of story. You just better abide by it. And no one's checking them to say, wait a second, are you right with this decision? Because obviously with your track record, you've been one of the worst in the country when it comes to a state Supreme Court that's had overturned records. So obviously your record's not the best already, but no one seems to be saying, wait a second, we're going to check and balance your power, and we're going to actually verify this and do it ourselves. We're not doing that. Once they make that decision, all you hear the Democrats say is, well, they made the decision, we just have to abide by it, and that's the end of it, end of story.
Well, it's not just a Kansas problem, it's a national problem, because we see these random judges saying, oh, well, what Trump is doing is wrong, and he can't do that. Wait, you have zero purview over immigration.
Right.
That's Congress, and they delegate it to the president. The courts are nowhere in there, but yet they're doing that, and we're allowing it. And that in itself is a dereliction of duty and unconstitutional.
Absolutely. Great points on that one, Nate. I appreciate that very much. You're absolutely right. These judges that come out and say, oh, you can't block refugees from coming in from certain nations, that's bullcrap. It's not true. And we should be able to just ignore it. We should just be able to say thanks, but no thanks. But it ain't going to happen. But we don't do that. Once the judges and the court say something, and oh my gosh, the judges said it, the court said it, I guess we better not do it now. The courts are supposed to be one of the weakest of the branches of government. We need to have our checks and balances back into play again. 316-721-8255. Let's take another phone call here. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Gary.
Gary, what's going on, sir?
I heard through some scuttlebutt that by the 2020 that the Kansas driver's licenses would have a star on them to indicate citizenship. Do you know anything about that?
The star on the driver's license, it's actually a national thing, and it's been going on for a while, and we talked about this, I don't know, about a month or so ago, to where it is they're going to start using it more for like national security purposes, to where you can have it to verify your passport, to verify it when you're at the airport, so that way you can actually fly and that you're not on a no-fly list, so that sort of thing, that you're actually in good standing with the laws and that sort of thing. So it kind of came up as oh my gosh, wait a second, they're trying to add a little bit more to it. It's really been going on for a while now, and it's really nothing new. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, we have different ways of trying to verify ourselves, and the system obviously doesn't work very efficiently because it's the federal government, but nonetheless, it's an attempt for them to try and find people who are trying to do bad things, or trying to fly, or maybe on no-fly lists, or may have a red flag for them to come up if law enforcement catches them, or that sort of thing. So it's really just like a good standing star of, hey, gold star, my friend, you did good with society.
Oh, okay. Well, so to be clear, it does not prove citizenship, then?
I don't know if they're using it for the citizenship status or not on that one. They may be trying to say that you're a legit citizen, that you're actually a citizen. You would think, though, that just by having a driver's license altogether, that you actually are a citizen, or at least a legal resident, in order to be able to drive. But that's starting to change already, because now we see states like California that are giving out driver's license to illegal immigrants. So maybe the gold star is part of that, and saying, now you can have the driver's license, but now you need the extra golden star to actually say that you can drive and you're actually a legit citizen.
Well, the star so that you can vote legally. I mean, like you said, California, I know there's probably 3 or 4 other states that places for immigrants to go safely.
They can drive, they can vote, they can do pretty much whatever they want to, because the states have allowed it to happen.
So some places, all you need is a driver's license to vote. Sure. So they're getting. I'm for it personally. I'm for it. Anything that can prevent an illegal from voting illegally, I'm for it.
Well, you're right, and I'm with you there. I think we should just get back to the basic fact of just saying, you know what, you're not allowed to get a driver's license unless you're actually a legal resident or a U.S. citizen, and you're here legally, whether you have a green card, a work card, a student visa, a work visa, or whether you're here on a legal status trying to get your naturalization or whatever. But if you're here illegally, sorry, you're not allowed to get a driver's license at all. You're not allowed to vote. You're not allowed to drive. You're not allowed to do these things because you're here illegally. But we're in different times now, so maybe that's the next step to it.
So the driver's license used to be proof of citizenship, then, correct?
It used to be you wouldn't be allowed to get your driver's license unless you actually had, your utilities to verify your address, you had your birth certificate, and you verified that you are who you are. It used to be that you could not get a driver's license unless you were actually a legit citizen or a legal resident. And now we've had different states actually come out and advocate for the fact that now you can get it just by being whoever, because you had to have a social security number or a TIN number. You had to have a number to verify you are who you are in order to get a driver's license. Now California and some other states are just handing them out and saying, oh, you're here you go.
Yeah, so okay, Andy. Well, you have a great day. It's a great program. Thank you.
I love it, Gary. I appreciate it very much. 316-728-8255. It's almost time. I got to take a break, but I do want to give away. We got to do this every Thursday, and I love giving it away because it's one of the best places. You got to enjoy it. You got to have some fun with it. Riverside Cafe, right here in 2 locations in Wichita, 1 location in Derby. And I know we have some callers on the line. I'm going to clear you for just a second as call me back and get me so that way you can get here with the complimentary burger and fries. Riverside Cafe, 9125 West Central Avenue, 739 West 13th Street, and 824 North Baltimore in Derby. 3 locations. We got you a complimentary burger and fries, baby. We'll get you a burger and fries there for Riverside Cafe if you can answer me one question, and that question is going to be, we actually did this a couple weeks ago, and you can do this off the air. We did it a couple of weeks ago, but if you can name somebody, one of the presidents of the top 20 in the nation of our former presidents, of which ones were on the list of one of the most wealthy presidents that this nation has seen. If you can call me and answer that one, all you got to do is name one of the top ones in the top 20. 316-728-8255. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2 already. It goes by way too fast. By the way, we had a couple callers over the break, did not get the answer yet for the one of the top 20 wealthy presidents in America's history. You still get a complimentary burger and fry at Riverside Cafe, so let's go to the phone, see if you can answer that one. Line number 1, good morning, what's your name?
Hey, morning, sir. It's Drew.
Drew, how are you, sir?
Doing great.
Good. What you got for us?
Well, on your last caller, a couple things for you. One of the things that bothers me is that, as you said, we've got armies of lawyers now down at the borders who are trying to extend these invaders rights that aren't supposed to be given to them. They're supposed to be rights for citizens, and we've got the courts turned sideways that are now claiming, well, those are now rights for everybody in the world, and that's just not right.
Yeah, they don't see driving as a privilege, but they see it as an actual right. They see a lot of these issues as an actual right instead of a privilege, that if you actually treat the society right and you actually follow the rule of law and you actually do these things properly, then you get to enjoy these. But like being an inmate and being someone incarcerated because you can't follow the rule of law and being imprisoned, you do not have the right to vote. You do not have the right to drive. You do not have the right to be involved in society in any way, shape, or form, let alone actually have your voice heard because you actually have some type of opinion on politics.
And I remember 7th grade when I took driver's ed, Mr. Repstein was very clear that driving was a privilege. So the other thing, though, that really bothers me, and this goes again to your prior caller, is the Real ID program, that little gold star on your driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to have a federal ID. And if you go back and look at the Social Security program, it's actually codified in law that the Social Security number is supposed to be used for one and one use only, and that is to obtain federal Social Security benefits. But now it's used like water, okay, by anybody and everybody. This Real ID program is now going to get expanded and used the same way. Folks, get ready to hear the phrase real soon. Papers, please.
There's an idea for it. I mean, you're right. We're not supposed to have national ID cards. Now, driver's license could be considered kind of the same thing as well, but you're right. If we continue to move down that road, we may eventually see something like a national ID. Lots more coming up. Hour number 3 right around the corner. Stay here. This is The Voice of Reason.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
Why would we give the ability for the Supreme Court to come back and say it's not adequate enough and be able to consume as much of the budget as they possibly want to for education, and then for everybody else to get the scraps and the leftovers? Why have we not focused on the Kansas Supreme Court's constitutional amendment to limit the power of the Supreme Court? Why is that not the number one priority and the only priority that we've had when it comes to educational finance?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Hey, welcome aboard. What's happening on a Thursday morning? The pre-Friday celebration rolls right along. We weren't able to get James Abbott on the show, whichever one I want to say right now. Not able to get him on right now. We'll try and get him on later on, either later on today or a different day. But James Abbott, author of the book The Outsider's Guide to UFOs, not able to join us at this moment, and we'll try and reconnect with him later on. So it's open line to you right now, whatever's on your mind. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. You're more than able to call and talk about anything that you'd like to there. I do want to kind of readdress some of the comments about Supreme Courts and courts and the judicial system as a whole, because right now it is a major factor, and I think we should really focus on some of the Supreme Courts and the judicial branch, of the fact that they are right now one of the most powerful branches of the government, and we need to remember the separation of powers. And I'd like to ask, and if you are progressive, if you are on the left side of the aisle, I know that we do have a lot of listeners that are on the left side of the aisle. If we do have some of them that are listening right now that would like to chime in on this, you get the front of the seat. You get to be on first and foremost, because I want to ask you, if we have a checks and balance system, if we have a separation of powers and if we have a checks and balances to make sure that no branch of government is more powerful than another, then how do we counter a Supreme Court that makes a decision and then everybody just falls in line and says, oh, this is constitutional or unconstitutional. That's it. End of story. We don't want to address anymore. We just have to abide by it. We just have to. If they say it's unconstitutional that we're not funding it appropriately, then that's it. End of story. We just have to do it. There's no question. If you remember, many even conservatives in our state government would come out and say the same thing, that, the Supreme Court did say this, so therefore we need to abide by it. We need to make sure it doesn't happen again, but we need to abide by it this time because they said that we need more money. Really? Because I'm pretty sure that's not how government works. They are not the dictators. They are not the individuals in black robes, guys and gals, that just say, here's the law. I'm laying it down. You must abide. And then we say, okay. It doesn't work that way. We need to start using the Supreme Court and the judicial branch back into our own favor. And I saw a story off of CNN about how 7 states are beginning to sue to end DACA. And this is what we need to do. If we're going to start fighting the legal system, we need to use the legal system to our favor as opposed to their favor. We need to start doing this. We really need to start actually using it to our own. That's why I've been such a big fan of personally of Ted Cruz, because someone who understands the system so intricately that we play their games and we beat them at their own games, because they don't like that. There's 2 types of individuals or 2 types of styles that progressives really, really don't like. And that is, number 1, people beating them at their own game because they're the ones that kind of make up the rules as they go. And as they make up the rules as they go to benefit themselves, if we start beating them at that game while they're making up the rules for them to go, then eventually they run out of ways and they box themselves into a corner and they look very, very foolish. And I like being able to play that game because it's a very smart tactic. The other style is the Donald Trump style, where you just go in and say, you're wrong. No, that's not right. You're wrong. And then they just don't know how to handle it, and they're just so upset, and they're so angry. And they're so furious. And they don't like either style. That's why either style is good. Having a Donald Trump style, having a Ted Cruz style, having a Rand Paul style, it is all very nice. It's just different flavors of the same coin. And we need to find a way to utilize both of them, or all 3 of them, all together, because libertarianism then as well, with the Rand Paul style, is just the purism of the you're not going to bend me or make me waver in my views in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying conservatives bend or waver as well, but we need to have a flavor of all of them, in my opinion. Now we're starting to see some states sue to end DACA. And do you think the courts are actually going to come back and say, hey, you know what? That's a great idea. Let's go ahead and allow this. We're going to grant it. We're going to say that it's unconstitutional. And now we can start overturning it this way. No, of course they're not. The circuit courts, maybe state Supreme Courts, maybe district courts, maybe the U.S. Supreme Court, they're all going to come back and say, oh, these states are suing, then, oh, no, you know what? Sorry, you can't do that. We're going to stand firm. But that will expose as well how ridiculous the court system actually is right now. And if we believe in any way, shape, or form about the separation of the federal rights and states' rights, and the focus on states' rights, as many Supreme Court justices have actually acknowledged the fact that states actually do have the authority and these rights to do so, then let's make DACA something to where each state can choose or not choose whether they actually accept DACA recipients or the DACA registration. Why not? It's a federal program, and immigration is supposed to be on the federal side. But then if we're going to allow certain states like California to become sanctuary states, if we're going to allow illegal immigrants to be able to get driver's license, if we're going to allow illegal immigrants to be able to vote, if we're going to allow illegal immigrants to do whatever they want to do, then fine. You know what? Then apparently immigration is now a state's issue, so let's address it at a state issue, and other states can begin not accepting DACA recipients or DACA applicants, or actually acknowledge what DACA is in the first place. Let's do that. What do you think they'd say then? What do you think some of these courts, how do you think that they would respond then if we just said, yeah, you know what, we're not going to accept DACA? Just like the governors that signed the petition saying, yeah, you know what, we're not going to accept refugees from Somalia. We're not going to do that. Well, why not? Well, because we're concerned about our safety, and we're concerned about the process to allow safety and allow people to come into the country. And if we are concerned about that, then we're not going to allow them to come into our state. We need to play the same game. as much as I support the fact that immigration is a federal matter and not a state's matter, and how California is being completely unconstitutional and how they're being completely absurd with allowing and defending the right for a sanctuary state and actually using our elected officials in California to defend that and fight the federal government from these types of rounding ups or enforcements or being able to actually look at work records or voting records or any of that sort of thing. If we're going to fight it, then let's beat them at their own game. Let's play the same ridiculous, stupid little game. Now, I understand, holding our head higher and looking past it and just being able to move forward. But at the same time, they don't care. Progressives sink to a level that you never thought that people could sink to sometimes. And I don't say that necessarily in a derogatory manner, but they have no level of standard to hold themselves to because they will sink to whatever level it takes for them to win. They are dirty players. They're gruesome players. And they change. They're kind of like the kid. You remember playing as a child? You remember playing hopscotch? You remember playing a board game? Remember playing something when you were, 7, 8, 9 years old? And you'd always have that one friend that would try and change the rules as the game would go along to try and benefit them. Oh, now you can only roll a 2 or else it's going to be my turn. Remember those? They'd always try and change the game as you would go along. That's what Democrats and progressives do. They change the rules as you go along. Oh, immigration, you know what? We need more voters. We need to help our agenda. We need to allow the open borders kind of mentality. We understand it's a ridiculous, absurd kind of mentality, but we're going to allow it anyways because we think it's a great idea. We need to be the emotional, touchy-feely side. We need to get everybody all worked up emotionally. So therefore, we're going to change the rules a little bit. And now all of a sudden, immigration's not going to be a federal matter, but it's going to be a state matter. And we're going to defend the sanctuary cities and the sanctuary state of California. And we're going to give them driver's license. We're going to let them do whatever they want to. And how dare you, Donald Trump, you fascist evil pig, try and come in and enforce it. We're not going to allow it. So all of a sudden, we've changed the rules. We've completely changed the board game. We're playing a game of chess, and you've completely, in the middle of the game, rearranged all your positions to wherever you want them to be. Now we can either overturn the board and say, heck with you, we're gonna actually do what we want to do because we're not going to play this game anymore, which would be ideal. But how many legislators, how many government officials are actually willing to do that other than Donald Trump? How many of them are willing to say, sorry, you're not allowed to do this, and if you try and do this, we will come after you with our full force. We will make an absolute example out of you because this is a federal matter and you have no say in this whatsoever. Until that's done, and until, again, our legislators grow a backbone and actually begin to support a mentality like that, then the states have to take it into our own hands. And fine, if you're going to defend sanctuary cities there, we're going to come back in our state and say that we're not going to accept DACA recipients. We don't recognize it, and you're not allowed to be here. And if you're here as a DACA recipient, then you will be asked to be removed. We will relocate you somewhere else because we will not accept DACA, and you will be considered an illegal immigrant here in the state of Kansas if we actually allow that to happen. And I think we should start going towards that road. I really think that we should start doing that because that would set an example. And then that would start a discussion on the other side of the aisle. Because right now, all we're hearing is about how the progressives control the entire dialogue. They control everything. They control the states. They control the immigration reform. They control the emotional touchy-feely. They control all of it. And they're the ones setting the discussion and the dialogue. Let's take it back. Let's do it. There are 7 states that have sued to try and end DACA. And the states are Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Nebraska, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Why can't Kansas be one of those? If anybody in the state legislature, if anybody in Attorney General Derek Schmidt's office, if anybody in the governor's office is listening to this program right now, I urge you to jump on board and join this lawsuit to end DACA. And state legislators, I know that you have, a whole 2 days left of the legislative session, today and tomorrow, really, with wrapping up on Saturday. I know that you're kind of crunched on time, but I think it's time that you jumped on board and you said, you know what, maybe until the federal government takes matters into its own hands and actually enforces immigration the way it needs to, it's time for you to pass legislation saying that you will not recognize DACA in the state of Kansas. And if any DACA recipients are in the state of Kansas, then you will be considered an illegal immigrant because apparently if the states are allowed to make their own decisions when it comes to immigration, which is not how the federal government's set up and not how the Constitution's set up, but if we're going to play that game, and we allow other states to do their own thing, then we're allowed to do our own thing as well, and we will not accept DACA recipients. Period. End of story. Let's make it happen, and I want that legislation on the floors by the end of the day tomorrow. Wouldn't that be nice? That'd be kind of awesome. 19 minutes past the hour. Your thoughts and calls. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
And welcome back into the Voice of Reason. 24 minutes past the hour. Happy Thursday to you. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK if you want to join in. I know I would like to see, as I mentioned in the last segment, I'd like to see us use a lawsuit or some type of legislation, at least, to be able to say that we don't recognize DACA recipients in the state of Kansas. First off, realistically, it's not going to happen. That would be really nice. But it's not going to happen. It's just not plausible. Our legislators, come on, they would rather vote with 100 votes in the House to be able to make Kris Kobach pay for his own fines in court. And that's more of a priority to them than actually saying that we should stop litigation for educational funding lawsuits in the state that cost the state over $7 million and the taxpayers over $7 million. To them, that's a bigger priority to them. So they're not going to create a lawsuit or any type of legislation saying that we're going to not accept DACA recipients in the state of Kansas. It's not going to happen. And, of course, then it brings up the question of how are we going to enforce that, which we really can't. We just say that we're going to make a claim of that. We're going to turn into a sanctuary state because there's going to be potentially many DACA recipients in the state of Kansas that now we consider as illegal immigrants, and then it just goes down. But that might be a good thing. I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe because we start labeling that and we get on that list of a sanctuary state with illegal immigrants in the state of Kansas, then maybe that'll help us, first off, be able to wean off some federal money if they begin cutting off some of the funding for us, and we can become a little more independent. Plus, then maybe it'll focus on the issue again and bring it back up at the federal level so we can actually do something productive about some of this. 316-721-8255. Governor Jeff Collier helped former criminals seeking state jobs. Kansas Governor Jeff Collier issued an executive order to prevent former criminals from automatically being disqualified for many state jobs. I kind of like this idea, and I give him credit and applaud him for doing this. The order signed yesterday by Collier will prevent state agencies from requiring people seeking jobs to disclose their applications whether they've been convicted of a crime. Collier said an order is designed to help people who's been convicted of crimes find work after they've been released from prison or jail so that they are less likely to commit new crimes. Look, here's the thing. Once you pay your dues, then it should be hopefully relatively easy to get back on track and be able to start your life again, depending on what the crime was. Obviously, if it was something terrible and drastic, then that's not something that we want to say, oh, okay, just come back in. But if it was something ridiculous, you learned your lesson, you grew up, you had a change of heart, you understand whatever, then, the hardest part is actually getting back on your feet. And we don't want them committing another crime because they feel more comfortable going back into incarceration. First off, we have a wonderful, and Governor Brownback does not get enough credit for this because I think he did a wonderful job crafting this, and he's actually helping craft a program like this at the federal level. But our corrections facility programs are absolutely fantastic here in the state of Kansas. As I told you, what was it, a few months ago, almost a year ago maybe already, maybe it was last summer, I forget when, I got to go up and got to tour through the Hutchinson Correction Facility and got to go see it and go see the programs that they had, and it was wonderful. And I gave a little recap when I got back on the air. And it was an absolutely great experience to learn about how this is all done. It said we have to have these, but nonetheless, realistically, we do. And we have a great corrections facilities program. And because of that, we have one of the lower stats across the nation as people returning to prison after they've been released, because we have programs to help them get on their feet, help them set up jobs, help them feel comfortable, understand the hustle and bustle and the fast-paced life that we actually have outside the walls and actually in the real world. And we help them get back on track in that sense. Not to mention the fact that they, of course, paid their dues. And most jobs that I'm aware of, you don't do a background check on your first interview, do you? Not that I know of. I know when you do the application, sometimes it'll ask if you have a criminal record and what that may be and that sort of thing. But most jobs, as I'm aware of, if you're just doing the first interview, you usually don't do any type of background check. And this is all it really is. And Governor Collier, understanding that, many may be assets to our state if we are hiring at the state level with some of our agencies and departments. And if you have a criminal background, then all we have to do is make sure that you're not super crazy and that we'll still do a background check, but you're not going to be punished right off the bat by trying to apply for a position if you may or may not have a criminal background. The national employment rate law projects that 31 states have this, what they call the ban the box policies in government hiring. Collier's order still would allow agencies to ask about an applicant's criminal history during an interview, and it would not apply to positions that cannot legally be held by convicted criminals. So it's not changing anything if it's a high-risk job or maybe a high-profile job. Well, you're not allowed to have a criminal record in any way, shape, or form. Doesn't change that. But ones that are a little more relaxed in that sense, you just don't have to do the background check and actually release that right off the bat. I think this is good news. Give more opportunities. Let's get people back on track. Let's not punish for the rest of their lives. We make them pay their dues. You know me. I'm the tough love kind of guy. Make them pay their dues. Once they're back up and at it, then we can actually get them back on track and intertwined back into society all over again. Bottom of the hour news. It's open line. See you when we come back. 316-721-8255. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday. The pre-Friday celebration rolls along.
When taxes go up, so do our tempers.
Oh my God, no!
Fighting for Kansans every day. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome into it. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. This is The Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier, and it's great to have you along today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It's the pre-Friday celebration, and it's open line to you for the last half hour of the program. The Facebook live feed, by the way, is still up and rolling as well. You can leave a comment, ask a question. Let's see here. I thought I had a new comment. Nope, that's all right. I got to tell you, there are some weird shenanigans that happen in the world today as things are just getting all weird and topsy-turvy, and we're just going upside down on some things. And common sense seems to be lacking in society on a normal basis. The latest story from the Sentinel KSMO. As you know, Denidri Herbert, Dave Traubert, great individuals that contribute to that one. Scout program, the Boy Scouts. Scout program capitulates and drops boy from name. And this fits in directly with the discussion we had yesterday when it came to the transgender movement. Now we are having gender identity issues. And now the Boy Scouts will no longer be called the Boy Scouts, but just the Scouts of America. And this was the same one. Remember, this is a private club, a private organization, and they got a lot of heat back in, a few years ago when they decided to actually allow LGBTQ members and gay students to go into the Boy Scouts, as some people said that they must because they're bigoted, evil, fascist Nazis, and they have to, and others said they're a private club and a private organization. They can do whatever the heck they want to, and they can allow in and not allow in whoever they want to because of that fact. And a lot of people were upset about that. So they ended up turning and reversing a little bit and saying that they were now going to accept LGBTQ members into the Boy Scouts. Now, according to USA Today, the REAR program announced it would be dropping boy from its name after 108 years. Boy Scouts of America will retain its name, but its title under Boy Scouts, which for more than a century served boys between the ages of 10 to 17, will become the Scouts USA. The program for 7 to 10-year-olds will continue to be called Cub Scout because it's a gender-neutral title, according to the newspaper. So there you have it. Now you have the gender-neutral Cub Scouts that remains as Cub Scouts, and then you have the Scouts USA instead of the actual Boy Scouts. Aren't you glad about that one? As we continue further and further down the road of absolute and complete insanity. Now, there is a piece that I find funny that relates to this as well, as for whatever reason, masculinity when it comes to this, because if you're a boy, like Boy Scouts, if you're a boy and you're a guy, then you have lots of masculinity, and we talked about the masculinity issue yesterday and the mental health issue, and if you see a female as a young male, and the hormones are raging and you're going crazy and you're usually get a little excited and get to try and puff out your chest a little bit and you try to impress her a little bit because that's hormonally and, biologically what guys do is we try to impress the female. We try to gain attention to the female. And nowadays, if we do that, then apparently we have way too much masculinity and we're really terrible human beings. And we need to stop that and not be trying to impress females because biologically we're supposed to turn away from our biology. And now the women are supposed to be very provocative with their dressing styles, but then not have guys try to impress them or try and drool all over them. Do you see the weirdness that happens here? So we're trying to get back to a little bit of sanity, and according to Fox Detroit, there's a story about how the school handed out modesty ponchos for teens dressed inappropriately for prom. Because we do have the progressive movement to make women and girls look a little more provocative, because that's their right to do so, and their prerogative, right? They have the prerogative to be able to dress provocatively and show a little bit more than usual and make things a little bit tighter than usual, so that way, they can show off their form because they're very proud of who they are because they're women, which is great. All the power to them. But then when guys see that and biologically say, hey, there's a nice-looking gal over there. I'm going to try to impress her. I'm going to start trying to flirt with her a little bit. Then, no, you can't do that. That's masculinity. We live in a crazy world. So the school handed out modesty ponchos, according to Fox Detroit, with girls that may be dressing a little too risque. After receiving backlash, the Dearborn Divine Child changed courses and said it will not be so. They will not have the so-called modesty ponchos at prom, but the Divine High School said in a letter to parents dated as of May 1st that the ponchos will not be handed out to prom for most recent dealing changes. According to the story, female students at Dearborn Catholic High School who are deemed to be dressed inappropriately for prom will be handed out modesty ponchos for the school to wear over their dresses. Apparently now they're reversing that, but it was literally just a pink poncho that they just draped over their dress. Well, you know what? Hey, do what you do. And if we're going to start changing the mentality like this, then maybe we need to cover some things up. But yet, apparently now they're going to reverse that because how dare you actually try to impose your evil will of standards and morals onto my child because they can do whatever the hell they want to. Welcome to Society 2018. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
A very confused Wallace, apparently.
Oh, well, you're very confused, yes, because you have probably way too much masculinity. And if you tried to impress your wife from way back in the day, then you probably were part of the problem as well.
Yeah, so I'm confused. So when a man walks his boyfriend around on a dog leash with nipple clamps, or
don't put that image in my head. What are you doing? What is this?
Well, I left out the full description, but see, that's natural, that's normal, that's to be celebrated, that's acceptable. But a man or a young man who is attracted to a woman who dresses to accentuate her natural God-given beauty, that's toxic.
Yes. That is toxic masculinity that he needs to go to the masculinity confession booth for and understand that he's probably got some kind of mental illness.
Well, then I'm mentally ill. I mean, it's as bad as that one gal I was reading who wore a Chinese gown to her prom, and she was accused of cultural appropriation.
Well, of course,
because it was just a one-time thing, and she doesn't appreciate the culture. You know what? Last night I had egg rolls and fried rice, and I didn't give a crap about the Chinese people. I was just enjoying, appropriating their food last night.
You were enjoying something that they were able to actually offer in the, in the melting pot, which that's the whole point. We're not appropriating anybody. We're actually enjoying what they actually offer. Guess what? I had chips and salsa last night. Does that mean I culturally appropriated Hispanics?
Yes, you did.
Yes,
and
I did.
Go apologize. You should go take in 400 or 500 illegals.
Yeah, I probably should.
Let's talk about the Boy Scouts. I got to tell you, you remember this? I think it started in the mid to late 90s, where these leftist groups just attacked the Boy Scouts, took them to court, made it so it was harder for them to use federal facilities, land and parks and stuff to go camping at, because they excluded homosexuals from the scouting program. this all started, and yet, what was funny? Think about James Comey. What did we hear about James Comey 6 months ago? Oh, he's great. He is a Boy Scout. Scouting was an institution that everyone looked up to. When you were called a Boy Scout,
right,
you were a good guy. You were trustworthy. It meant I'm one of 6 Eagles in my family back in the 80s when it actually meant something to be a Boy Scout.
Sure.
And you wonder why people ask me all the time, well, this school shooting, why do you think this happened? Well, after Columbine, and I think you said you were out there during that period.
Not Columbine, but another shooting that was close to that. Yes.
But you start looking at what happened in the 90s, because in the 80s, when I was in high school, we didn't have this phenomenon. And here's what I say: it's not just one thing. You can't just point your finger and say, nope, this is it. Being progressives have spent decades just tearing at the moral underbelly of this country. And it goes from devaluing human life in the womb to widespread pornography, to fatherless homes, to women who think you don't need a man to properly raise a boy into a man. And it's just so many, all these, the drugs and alcohol and all these Ritalin, and you start putting all this stuff in a melting pot, and you have a bunch of kids, more than we should, that just don't care. And now you have the scouting program, which was kind of the last bastion to help young men come together as young men and be led by people to teach young men how to be a man.
Sure.
And now you don't even have that.
Well, you're right, because now we're changing it. Again, it's not going to be the Boy Scouts of America anymore, but it's going to be the Scouts USA, because that way it's gender neutral, because that way we can have whatever in there.
Now it's more proper for a man to look at a man as, I don't want to call it eye candy, we'll call him, you look at a man as beef jerky. That's appropriate, but to look at a woman as eye candy, that's a sin.
How could we do something like that? What do we miss? Wallace, I appreciate it there. That's thanks for that image there. Appreciate both of those, by the way, on that one. 3167. And look, I mean, if you have different lifestyles, I don't really care. That's not the point of this discussion. The different lifestyles is not what I'm trying to get at here. The point is, though, is that if we're changing the Boy Scouts of a private club, now if they're openly choosing to do this themselves, then that shows that they've really changed within the Boy Scouts of America themselves already as well. But if it was forced upon them by outside forces, then that really shows that we really don't respect private clubs to actually make decisions as a private club. It kind of fits in like we had here with the private clubs on university campuses not accepting other people to become members because they didn't have the same ideological views. It was someone trying to get into a religious group, a private group on a campus. They wouldn't allow them because they weren't part of that religion. And then it was the big hoorah that you have to accept anybody to become a member, even if they're not part of that religion, which that was the whole point of the club. So now we're imposing our will on private organizations. One thing that falls into this, and we got another caller I want to take here as well, but I want to open this up to women, and because this fits in properly as well, is the fact that as guys, we're apparently not supposed to be excited about the female sex anymore and try to impress them and try to pursue them to become wives, to become families, that sort of thing. We're not supposed to do that anymore because that's ultra masculinity, and that's terrible and a horrible thing. So the question is, on the reverse side of it, with women being attracted to men, what's the appropriate acceptance there now when it comes to women being able to go after and pursue men? And I want to ask this in the sense that I always had this discussion with my wife every once in a while of the whole thing with the new fad of the dad bod. And I don't know why there's such a trend with the dad bod, to where the dad that's, not necessarily as chiseled anymore and not works out as much and is tough anymore, because of the fact that he's a dad and he's got more priorities with the wife and with the kid and with everything going on. And he's got kind of maybe a little bit of the beer gut and that sort of thing. I'm not referencing myself, by the way, in this situation, just to be clear. But what's the fascination with the dad bod? So the question I want to give you a copy of a book, The Outsider's Guide to UFOs. We were going to get James Abbott on to the program today. We weren't able to get him. We'll try and get him back on the show later on. But I want to open up to a couple females. And if you're able to answer the dad bod fad and whether you like it and agree with it or whether you don't, I'll give you a copy of the book. and maybe another goodie, a bumper sticker or something to throw in there as well. But I want to get your thoughts as a female on the whole pursuing men now and what's accepted and not acceptable, since apparently we're not able to pursue women because we just have ultra masculinity, and whether you prefer the chiseled, hard, model-looking dude that works out and rips his shirt off and it's the Fabio-looking thing, or whether it's more of the dad bod that you would pursue as a female. 316-721-8255. I want to hear from you on that. While we wait for some of those calls, let's take another one here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Oh, I guess we lost him there. That's all right. All right, give me a call and let me know the dad. I don't understand the fascination. I've seen the story that says that apparently the dad bod is acceptable because it means that they're more wholesome and that they have their focus is more so on the family as opposed to themselves, and that they're a better dad or a better husband, or that statistically that's what they believe. At least that's what females and women believe. But at the same time, come on, when you're young and you're pursuing guys, and do you want a guy that looks like the dad bod already, or do you want the chiseled guy to hopefully turn into the dad bod, or stay nice and chiseled? I don't know. That's the curious question that I have for you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We'll take a break. We'll take your phone calls about that and more when we come back. 10 minutes to the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
7 minutes to the top of the hour. Welcome back in. The phone's light, and I'll get your thoughts on this dad bod movement. If you're a female, get your because apparently, again, guys are not allowed to pursue women anymore because that shows ultra masculinity, trying to impress them with their ego, with trying to be the macho guy, trying to get the attention of the female, which is kind of the whole biological thing that we're entwined to do, and the whole, I don't know, how we've survived and became, existent for as long as we actually have. So apparently that's bad now. So now the women need to pursue the men. So how do you properly pursue men now if you're younger? And would you prefer the chiseled kind of Fabio-looking guy or the dad bod with a gut? That apparently more and more women say that they're attracted to. So let's go to the phones and get your take on this. 316-721-8255. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen.
Helen, how's it going?
I'm doing just great. Well, when I was younger, like the scriptures say, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I spake as a child, and everything. But when I was younger, I was attracted to, or I thought I was attracted to, the macho jock kind of a guy or something like that.
Okay.
But when you kind of meet some of those guys, you kind
not so
of,
much?
Not so much. And, my husband, when I met him, he was extremely handsome, but he wasn't really necessarily a jock guy. He's more like a nerdy guy. And I'm more attracted to an intellectual guy, not somebody that's
okay. So you'd go for for maybe more of the dad bod, not necessarily all toned and fit and whatever, because the guys that you met were like that were kind of the jerks.
Exactly.
And that seems to be the trend now, that more women are going that way because they do realize that maybe some of not all of them, obviously. I don't want to lump into that because, just look at what I've been trying to work on here. But jokes. But when they realize that some of the guys that focus all their entire time in the gym, that sometimes they're a little more self-focused and they don't necessarily have the qualities of becoming a good husband or a dad. And that's at least some of the stories that I've been reading of why some women are going away from the chiseled looking guy for more of the dad bod style.
Right, like the old saying used to be, all bronze and no brains.
There you go. Well, that's an interesting concept there. Helen, stay on the line. We'll get you a book here. You can have a choice between Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know, The Outsider's Guide to the UFOs, or What Was Really the Matter with the Kansas Tax Plan. I got a copy of all three of those. So stay on the line here for a minute, and we'll get you a book, whichever one you'd like to there. Your thoughts on this? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Oh, I guess we lost another one there. You can give me a call back. And I don't know, people are going that way. But the question is that apparently now where guys should not be really excited about seeing a female and trying to impress her, the women need to be able to go about it their own way. And women, you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. You really do, because if guys are scared, I mean, come on, look at the Me Too movement to where every time that there's a closed-door meeting with a guy and a gal and a boss and a coworker or whatever, and there could be potential of a sexual harassment case even though nothing happened, but the threat of that we're scared. If a guy asks a girl out on a date, then all of a sudden he's pursuing her, then that's quote-unquote potentially sexual assault or sexual harassment or harassing her. And now many guys potentially could be very scared of actually even trying to talk to women. They had the full power now, which means women, you've already had it for a long time. Anyways, you're kind of the neck that turns the head of the family household regardless, because, I mean, come on, I am the man of the house. I make the decisions, and I say what's going on in my house when my wife lets me to. So you realize that women, you have more power than you usually realize. So how do you, maybe as a younger individual or someone who's gone through this already and maybe married for years and years, how do you control that situation and pursue the guy that's okay in society today? And then what kind of guy would you actually try to pursue with that? So it's an interesting kind of concept. We got about 30 seconds. Let's sneak in one more phone call here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Oh, I guess we lost him. That's all right. Appreciate it, though. Helen, stay on the line. We'll get you a copy of the book. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. I think it's kind of a fun one to have. It's a free-for-all Friday tomorrow. We do have some great guests lined up as well. You're not going to want to miss it. As always, we love it. We appreciate it. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason on a Thursday on KQAM. Have a great day, everybody.